Hello friends, have a good time. We are at your service with Shabnameh. Will the battle between Iran and the Zionist regime move from hidden to open? This is a report written by Al Monitor. An American base has come to address those things that are happening, and has analyzed which direction the future of the West Asian region may move in spite of the agreement that Saudi Arabia had with Iran. Before we read this report together, I want to tell you one thing. When the tension around the country increases, or events happen between that country and its neighbors, or extra-regional powers, you have to look at one point inside that country. And that point is that, sir, there have been changes in this country. I give an example. For example, a group may come to power in Iran. This group, their view and their behavior, in the world of politics, may be extreme. In the area, and their interactions, then you look, the tension is getting serious, and it is rising. Is it related to their behavior? Yes. Changes are taking place, and these changes are showing themselves. Or vice versa. A group comes to power in Iran, this group is a compromiser. Or vice versa. When a group comes to power in Iran, this group is a compromiser. They attack scientists in the middle of the country, they attack your elite, they attack your commander, they carry out assassinations. They do actions like this. They do vandalism against the centers. This supporter of Westerners is in power. He says, we don't get involved in tension. Then, they carry out terrorist operations again. They will act against you again. The supporter of the Westerners comes in front of the camera and says, God's curse on you. Did you imagine that you can involve us in the tension trap? Never. Never. Good man. In this tension trap that they have started. Why are only the soldiers hitting Iran? Why does no one care about you? So, one place of work is limping. Why? Because we understand, here these changes are for my benefit. Now I can hit a basic blow. So, in a situation where there is a change of rail laying in a system, that change of rail laying shows itself in the events of the region and the events around that country. Did it happen in occupied Palestine? Yes. From 4 months ago, exactly 4 months ago when Netanyahu took office, everything fell apart. They are saying, the situation is critical, everything is worrying. The internal events are very bitter, the things that happen around are worrying, it is more bitter than Iran's words. And the blows we may take. Why? Because he came to work 4 months ago, threatens Iran. Sir, the threat 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. When it happens a lot, others come to this conclusion, which they need to think about. Because if they don't think, you will damage the area. Damage the area, you will mostly damage yourself. And in our region, if anyone from any group gets hurt, we will be upset. Because we consider ourselves bigger in this region. Occupied Palestine has moved in this direction. During the period of Naftali Bennett, once they did this stupidity, they did not learn. A year ago he said, 1,000 knives against Iran. Recently, the officials of the Zionist regime said, 10,000 operations have taken place against us. Well, when you declare war, you have to answer. And so, where is Naftali Bennett now to take responsibility for it? Not at all. There is none. There is a conflict somewhere, in the same occupied Palestine. Netanyahu's stupidity was worse. He threatened to direct and military tension. Now you can see the streaks of conflict around him. I said these things to get here. They do not have and will not have any solutions to solve these problems that have reached a high level. In case, this government, which is in power now, will go away. Did they realize this in occupied Palestine? Yes. These unrests you see, demonstrations that never end are on the street every day. They understood very well that they have to clear their account with Netanyahu's government. Let's read the report and see what Al Monitor said about this. Said that, an Israeli on Saturday 3, he means a Zionist. In the northern West Bank, while Tel Aviv was holding a commemoration ceremony for the fallen soldiers, it was shot at. This incident occurs while, in recent weeks, tensions between Zionists and Palestinians have increased in the West Bank, including the deadly attack in the Jordan Valley in the week of April when 3 people were shot and killed. On Sunday night, Israeli forces arrested 16 Palestinians suspected of carrying out militant activities against Israelis throughout the West Bank. He is setting an example every day. How many people were killed there? One day you would allow no one to be killed so we can see the statistics that no blood was spilled. No. Something is happening every day. Then, he says, they went and arrested some people. What day did they arrest? He says, he was arrested for the April incident. Yesterday, some Zionists were killed again. The same in the previous days, the same the day before. I said this to get here. When you try with all your might to cope, you went and arrested different groups, took their forces, and confronted it. A few commanders in a horrible way, in front of everyone's eyes. You sent the terror squad in the middle of the street. They picked up a gun, targeted the guy and ran away. Very strange. Have you ever seen such a scene? For example, tell a group, sir, you're to kill a person. They should also go and target that person in front of everyone's eyes. Then, they get on their motorbikes and go. Strange. Although they did all this, they did not move towards peace in the slightest, and this is the most frightening of all. That is, something is hitting you, which is uncontrollable and is not going to calm down. Let's go read the rest of it. The Zionists themselves understood this. He goes on to say that the Zionist regime is facing not only tension in the West Bank, but simultaneous and perhaps even coordinated threats in its other fronts as well. This is very interesting to me. When he says that, at the same time, the West Bank is facing threats in other places that may be coordinated, its simpler translation is that this peace is for them too. That these are compatible with each other? Or not, all of them together are now in a good position to strike, whoever started. If they are in harmony, that is a disaster. That is, an organized process of coordination has been launched against them, they arrest everything, and everything they hid does not stop. Let's read it further. 50 years ago, the Minister of Defense of the Zionist regime announced that the command of the defense forces should be ready for a possible multi-front war. From Egypt, from Syria, and from other groups. We must be ready. If Libya is added, Iraq is added, others are added, we can defend the country. He says. 5 months after these words, when they were celebrating an Eid, the same thing happened. Egypt attacked them, Syria attacked them. The attack was a surprise, and the army prepared for battle. However, he did not use reserve forces and besiege forces. Because, he believed that the regular forces could stop the advance until the reserve forces were deployed. To this day, this error is considered as the biggest security failure in the history of the Zionist regime. I want to ask you a question. He says, the capacity of the reserve force was not used during that period of time, and this was a mistake. Should have used. Sir, suppose a conflict happens now, and he wants to general mobilization and use the capacity of the reserve forces. What is the reaction of the reserve force? A statement issued recently by many forces in the Zionist army, different groups of 300 people, 400 people, 10 people, 5 people. In the 8,200 unit and the unit, for example, airborne, everyone said this, as long as Netanyahu is there, we will refuse to be on the battlefields and those places related to service. Did you understand what I mean? You want to use your reserve military force now, part of it does not want to cooperate. And a part of it is also disappointed with what is happening. This is the main weakness they have now. Read the rest of the report. He says that the Minister of Defense of the Zionist regime announced to the media in a similar assessment that the Israeli army must prepare for a multi-front war with a real security threat on all fronts simultaneously. We are at the end of an era of limited conflict. Today there is an outstanding phenomenon of convergence of fields. With these comments, this person, the Minister of Defense of the Zionist regime, is dealing with the actions of the Iran-backed forces in Syria, in Gaza and the West Bank. The same attacks that happened recently were a part of Lebanon, that too in coordination. Al-Monitor says that these comments, made by the Minister of Defense of the Zionist regime, have attracted the attention of few people. Perhaps because more Zionists are worried about the unprecedented internal conflict between pro-democracy forces and the ultra-nationalist and ultra-orthodox government and its consequences for the economy, judiciary and social fabric. This warns everything, no one values this coin. Let's read the rest of it together. What happened that the Minister of Defense is saying this in the current situation? He says, the Minister of Defense did not explain more about the reason for his concern. But there is no secret. It seems that he is referring to the constant erosion of deterrence and influence of the Zionist regime on all fronts, which has been greatly accelerated by the recent events. Since the current government came to power, since 4 months ago, the new allies of the Zionist regime in the region have started to distance themselves from it, or hesitated or went towards Iran. Friends, first of the report, I would like to give you a point. I said that we have to look, when you are involved in a crisis somewhere, changes in governance have been formed. Its political figures changed? If they changed, did they change its policy? Everything that has happened has one person to blame, and that is Netanyahu. When the extremism increases, it says, this is the process, this process has accelerated. When extremism increases, when you keep talking about attacking Iran's infrastructure, it was not like a lie. In the recent unrest, I served you. Iran's focus, if it were to involve itself, it was not unlikely that the Zionist regime and America would destroy our infrastructure. And then they say, Iranian people of this group, Reza Pahlavi, you see them protesting in the streets, outside the country. They asked us to attack their infrastructure, and we did. That your country is attacked, and in the media of the world they cover it with a justifiable cover. It was not unlikely that they would do something like that. We talked about this before. Here's the thing. When you keep saying these things when it's like reality, you have to wait for the hit. And these, as I said of course, are not blows. However, I have to say 2 to 3 points regarding the comments of the regime's defense minister and this part of the Al-Monitor report. The first part. It says, since these have come to work, we have been witnessing this erosion of deterrence. Which has become faster. It means that these things were. It has always been in occupied Palestine in recent years. Now it is faster. Then he says, the second thing we are witnessing is that its allies distance themselves from it. He went to the Arab countries and said, let's talk together. Everyone is distancing themselves from it. Only the only idiot who is distancing themselves from this in the current situation. One is the king's son, who has gone before, one is Aleph. That is, 2 children from the Elif and Pahlavi families. 2 unfortunate families, throwing them into the lives of Iranians and the people of Baku. These 2 idiots got up and went there when Israel is going to destruction. One of them established an embassy, and one of them visited. For example, you crazy people. This time next year, do you think this regime still exists, that you got up, went and met it? Think for a moment, be reasonable for a moment. No. They don't have a mind, these are just in the peak of ignorance that they should do something. He says, all its allies are distancing themselves from it. Some of them hesitated, they said should we go to him or not? At all. Is it possible for the Zionist regime to continue to survive? He says, some went to the side of Iran like Saudi Arabia. They said, no, with the situation we see here, we should move towards Iran, the situation is better over there. Let's read the rest of the report together. He said, how many fronts can a war take place? Asked a question, is it possible to hit the Zionist regime from several fronts? Or he will come and say, sir, let's attack the Zionist regime together with me. Then he says, such a thing is very unlikely. That Iran wants to do the same thing, and that others want to come and cooperate and attack the Zionist regime together. Then he asked a question, so why are they so worried? If something like this, the probability is low. Before we examine the cause, let me say something. So what was the purpose of these events that happened on these fronts? Its purpose was that an invisible hand would come to remind them and say, look, in coordination, if necessary, in 120 seconds, 38 missiles came towards you, did you see? At the same time, if necessary, we can engage you in war on all fronts. Nothing is complicated. We don't want to at the moment. So don't bluff in vain. Don't talk about attacking Iran, don't talk about confrontation, so that the story doesn't get more complicated. Let's go and check the continuation of it together. One is that they know that Iran does not want to do such a thing in the current situation. And no one declares war on multiple fronts. So why do they say this? One of the reasons is this. They are extremely worried about the significant gap between the Zionist regime and America. Now, if we come and say that, sir, America, as you see, has a conflict in Ukraine, and on the other side, it has its eyes on Taiwan. One thing for example, miraculously, they were focused on us, they went to get involved somewhere else. He says, in such a situation, as many say, it must be accepted, it has declined. He can't do it anymore. They are hitting American bases in Iraq and Syria directly with missiles and drones. Its military force is killed and cannot do anything. Did you know that yesterday, from the region that is in the hands of the Kurdish forces, the Kurdish forces were placed as checkpoints in a region, which means that area too, The end of it is where the American bases are present. It means, for example, these are similar to their sacrifices. The armed forces went, they attacked, they beat these forces to go and enter, so that they could attack the Americans. When the number and capacity of Kurdish forces increased for defense, they fled. The American fighter got up, went this way and that. Then see who it was. Look, the first time that there is a ground attack on America is happening. A lot of words. In other words, they went to its base in Syria and did a ground attack. Do you know what I want to say? Sir, this has declined in all dimensions. But in this decline, he fell out with the Zionist regime. If we say these things, what are the reactions? Everyone says, Sir, these people are crazy. At the end of the report, are America and the Zionist regime abandoning each other? In this situation, there are signs whether they will let go or not. On the other hand, that is, there is now the fear that a rebellion will happen in the military ranks. Now they are in conflict. Now, the story gets scary. This is one of their main concerns. Now, if the Zionist regime has an idea for war on several of the Zionist regime, when its internal ranks are involved, is that Netanyahu is extremely hated. Let's go and read the end of the real allies of the Zionist regime. Let's read the end of this anymore. It says, and internal unrest Israeli is the most worrying source, and on the other hand, want to be named, these have signs of mutiny in the military ranks. The wave of attacks that Israel has faced in the last 2 years, what happened, along with external threats and internal unrest. Let me say now, threaten from outside. When Netanyahu is hated, Mossad is always looking for an assassination target in Tehran. Now, he hit everyone. Those who in this situation went along with the Zionist regime. This is how they say it. Even the Arab countries heavily involved in the crises that he is involved in from the inside in third countries. How stupid they are. Security and intelligence forces in this discussion, which cannot be mentioned much at the moment. And from the outside, it has involved the interior of the occupied Palestine. He says, a security source said that this is happening, part of it is from abroad and part of it is internal unrest. It is a real threat. We may end up in exactly the same situation as we faced 50 years ago. That is, to come to ourselves and see that we were involved in ourselves. They are hitting us from the outside, to punish us. I think that's enough. I don't have any other points. If you have any points, please send them in the form of a message. It will help this report to be more complete with your message. Dear friends, I am very sincere. I have a lot of devotion. Have a good time.